Hello everyone, it's Kirsty, you know me. Today I'm going to just have a look at and a bit of a rehash of the Vallow Daybell case. Now it's going forward, there's a couple of things that have happened. Well, there's a heap of things that have happened since I've done a video, but a judge has granted the state's motion to join Chad Daybell and Lori Vallow together in their trial. Now, just 1 hour ago, Chad Daybell objects to this and does not want a joint trial with his wife, Lori Vallow. Now, that's interesting to me because I've been watching these two pretty closely and I see a whole bunch of things. The first thing I see is that I believe that they share psychosis. They share a mental illness. So the fact that they have to share this joint date is interesting. Now what I think is Daybell is going to chuck Lori underneath the bus. So that's what we're expecting. He will absolutely 100% throw that woman under the bus. So yeah, an hour ago he's like, nope, I don't want to do that. I don't want to combine the case with my wife. I want to be tried separately. But no, the judge has decided that they can face the music together. So I wanted to just have a little separate look at both of them and what's gone on and explain what I think mentally has happened to these two. What I believe has possibly triggered them to doing into what they have done by killing everybody in their wake. Alright, let's have a look at a couple of things. So this is what I think both of these people, inhumane people that they are, I believe that they share psychosis. Now that doesn't excuse them from what they've done, and they cannot use this as a way of getting away with what they've done because it's not recognised. It was dropped from the DSM-5 professional psychologists doodah, where in court you can't use it. Now what I've learnt is something called folie à deux, or folie à deux, which means madness for two. Deux is two, or it's shared psychosis or shared delusional disorder. Now this just gives you a quick idea of what it is, but I've looked right into it, and what I'm going to do is explain in detail how I think these two have it and all of the things that they've done and how it follows in the traits of the types of folie à deux that you can have. So moving forward, let's have a look. Okay, so I've got their charts, their natal charts. Chad Daybell over here on the left, Lori Vallow over here on the right. She was born on the 26th of June 73 and he was born on the 11th of August 68, so he is 5 years older than her. I'm not going to assume these house cusps around the edge are right because I don't know the time. So before I get into the whole folie à deux and the mental illness or psychosis that I really do believe they share, let's just have a little look at their charts. Okay, so here's Daybell's. Now the thing that's really annoying is that we can't see the 3rd and 9th house cusp because we can't tell what the cusps are because we don't know the time. If I did, I would be able to figure out by looking at this one here and the very opposite here to see how he thought, what his thought process was. The 3rd house is our logical thinking, our lower mind, and then the 9th house is our higher mind and our abstract thought. But we can't look at that with him, so what we need to do is look for the rulers, the natural rulers of those houses. So let's have a look at how this guy's mind works. This is where we look. Mercury. He has Mercury at 23 degrees of Leo, conjunct the Sun. So he's a Leo Sun. And I have to note here that we've got Mars in Leo as well. Now, if you've watched my videos, you'll note that a lot of people with Mars in Leo have this ability to get super angry. Not everyone, of course, but it's quite common in the charts that I see. So he has a lot of Leo going on here. But the way he communicates is Leo-like. So he's dominant. Leo's a male sign. It's a dominating, fixed fire sign. Okay, so let's see what aspects we have here. Mercury, I'll go down here, is trining Saturn, squaring Neptune. So there we go. So it's at 23 degrees. His Neptune is at 23 degrees. So that red line there means that there's 90 degrees between his Mercury, which is his mind, and Neptune, which is pure delusion. Not always, but in this case, yep, 100%. So let's keep that in mind. He's got a lot of Leo energy. He's got that square between Mercury and the Sun to Neptune, which is challenging for him to keep these delusions under control. Then what we're going to do is look over here, and although we've got a lot of bunched up areas, well, the point system that works for this here gives him a fixed fire outlook. So that's Leo, fixed fire. Now he has got a lot of planets in mutable earth here, and also cardinal fire. But there's a point system for this. The Sun gets 3 points, Mercury gets 2 points, Mars gets 2 points. The ascendant we can't count, we have to cross that one out. We can't count the MC there, you can't count the North Node, and you can't count Chiron. So really Saturn's only there, so we can rule out this one. So 3 plus 2 plus 2, that's how many points that is. Venus is 2 points, Jupiter 1, Uranus 1, Pluto 1. So 2, 3, 4, 5, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. So the point system shows us that he is fixed fire. He's Leo. We can see that by all these planets here in Leo. Okay, so that's really his drive. He's pushed by Leo, fixed fire. Alright, now let's have a look at Laurie in terms of the same thing. That was a quick change. Now we have Laurie Vallows. Oops. So we'll zoom right in. Now again, we don't know the time, so we can't look at the house cusps. So we look at Mercury. If we look over here, whoop, Mercury is at 29 degrees of Cancer, next to Venus at 26 degrees. So she's got a critical degreed 29, 56, so close to Leo as well. But she's definitely more submissive. It's Cancer. It's before Leo. Not that Cancers are more submissive than Leos, that's not the case. But Cancer comes before Leo. Leo's right there. It's just not as strong as Leo. It's water. So it's somebody that's more emotional and thinks more along the lines of the Cancerian than the Leo. Now what's interesting to me is 29 degrees of Cancer usually implies that you're very, very devoted to your family. So this actually really shows me that there was something not at all right with this woman. And I know there's something not right. She killed people, allegedly. But this is really twisted. A 29-degree Cancer Mercury wants to protect their children. But I'll keep going because there's some interesting things that do pop up throughout this video that you'll see, where it's like a dichotomy, where she feels like she is protecting her children, which shows me that she's even more off the wall than I thought. So let's have a look at what Mercury, oops-a-daisy, what it aspects. Now, what I see here is this big triangle, the blue one. Mercury goes up to Neptune. So she also has an aspect from Mercury to Neptune, but it's out of sign. So Mercury is in the wrong sign to be a trine. It should be in a fire sign, but it's not, but it's still in orb. So we have 120 degree between Mercury and Neptune. So this is her mind, and again, Neptune in this instance is delusions and the psychosis itself. So there's a contact there between them, but it's a trine. It's 120 degrees. A trine is more likely to follow in the path of a square, if you know what I mean. Or in other words, she is more likely to follow in the path of Chad Daybell. His is stronger. His square between the two, much stronger than this out of sign, widely orbed trine. But there is a connection. And not only that, we also have Mars in Aries. So she's got a fire sign Mars as well as he does. But she's got it all in a ground mind. Her sense of self and her psychosis is just all combined into one nasty looking grand trine. Now grand trines are mostly good, but when it's in somebody that's not very stable, it's not great. Having Mars in Aries there, it adds aggression and it adds a degree of such anger that the anger is in relation to the delusions, to the religion, to these things that she believes. And her mind is associated as well. And to me, she truly believes some of the things that she says. Okay, so what else do we have with her? She has a Taurus moon. Her maternal instincts gave way to lust and love, which is terrible. But so we actually have a thing going on here. Venus, which is love and all the rest of the feminine stuff, is in Cancer, where the moon is supposed to be, and the moon is in Taurus, where Venus is supposed to be. So these two are swapped over. So that's interesting. Now she's a Cancer sun. She has a 5-degree Cancer sun. She has Saturn at 25 degrees of Gemini, and I just recall seeing his 25 degrees of Aries. So he's got the same degree Saturn. He has the same degree of Saturn, but in Aries, where hers is in Gemini. So they're sextiling each other. So they have the same goals in mind. Okay, so I've digressed a little bit. Mentally, they both have Mercury and Neptune together, like I said. But Daybell's is stronger. There are exactly 23 degrees each, so there's no orb between them. They're squaring, they're strong. Mentally, this dude is unbalanced. Laurie has the connection, but it's weaker, and it's a follower. It follows the square. Okay, so where am I going with this? Let's have a look. When we have a look at the charts like that, we can see that Chad Daybell is stronger mentally, not in a good way, but stronger mentally than Laurie Vallow. But the pair of them, I believe, have or had individual psychosis, and when they got together, it turned into this shared psychosis. So I'm going to explain the different categories of folie deux and what it means and why I think these people fit into it. These two, I should say. And why these other people here, and Charles and Tylee and JJ and Alex Cox and everybody else that's involved had to lose their lives. Now, shared psychosis or folie deux is categorized into 4 different types. There's an imposed psychosis, which means that the secondary partner doesn't have any symptoms of psychosis, but when the primary partner enters the situation, the delusion then initiates. So what we have in this particular type of mental disorder is a primary person and a secondary person. I believe that Chad is the primary person and Laurie is the secondary person, so keep that in mind as I explain this. The next type is communicated psychosis, where the secondary partner initially does not play along with the first primary partner, but then they adopt their ideas, integrate them into their own life, and are usually sometimes, well, quite often, worse than the first primary partner. So that sounds a little bit like these two. Then we go into the third one, simultaneous psychosis. And this can happen quite often after an event. So if, say, 2 children lose their parents, they can go into simultaneous psychosis. But it's when 2 people have psychosis together. Then the last type is induced psychosis, where 2 people have a break from reality, but one of them has actual psychosis. Now, I'm thinking personally, and I'm not a psychiatrist, I can't diagnose them, but this is my opinion, and from looking at the charts, because I have categorized this type of disorder in the chart and into the planetary rulers, I believe personally that it's a little bit of a simultaneous psychosis, but more so induced psychosis. And I think that Laurie Vallow had a break from reality and Chad Daybell had straight up psychosis. Now, remembering he's the author of those books that he wrote, this whole crazy New World Bible type zombie stuff, to me, his personality screams somebody that has psychosis. And Laurie Vallow, to me, that is somebody that's had a break from reality. And then he has come along into her life, and then together they have then developed shared psychosis. Now, it's not as simple as that, it actually goes a lot further. You can't just diagnose people into those 4 categories even. Sometimes the secondary partner doesn't even show major issues like schizophrenia, bipolar, any of those types of mental disorders. So there's all different variations of it, but we'll just stick with what I know, because that's the only thing I can do, obviously. So another part of what can happen when people have shared delusions is something called mystical psychosis, and that is religious delusions and a rapid development of religious delusions. Some people think that other people are possessed, other people are just following God's orders, all that type of thing. So mystical psychosis. These two both, to me, showed definite symptoms of having a mystical psychosis. They believed that their religion was the only religion, and people that didn't believe it were dark entities or zombies. Okay, here we have both charts and both of the areas that I'm talking about. Mercury is shared, Neptune is psychosis. Neptune, Mercury. So we have both of them are aspecting. Okay, so there's significant crimogenic risk with having shared psychosis, and these two are a perfect example of that risk. Homicide that occurs from having folie deux or shared psychosis is quite common. Often it's because two people are isolated together and keep forming these delusional opinions of what the world is, in their case this mystical psychosis. Now there's various different types of things that occur within the relationship of the two people that begin to trigger homicidal behaviour. The first one is defensive functioning, it's called, and that's because the first person felt threatened for no reason, combined with mystical psychosis. So defensive functioning is when the first person, so Chad Daybell, feels threatened for absolutely no reason, combined with mystical psychosis, and then things happen. I'll talk about it afterwards as well, but let's just go through these. Another thing that can occur that can trigger homicidal behaviour is something that's called obstruction of delusion fulfillment. And that's where they both perceive that others are in the way of their supposed accomplishments because of their delusion. Now, the third behaviour that can happen is destabilization of the relationship. And that means if they are both separated, they'll kill the person that's separating them. So it's interesting, in all of those things, it seems that definitely two of them are at play with these two. Obstruction of delusional fulfillment. They both perceive others are in the way of their supposed accomplishments because of their mystical delusion. They believe other people are zombies and trying to stop them. And then destabilization of relationship. If anybody tries to separate them, they will kill the person separating them. So when we go back to here, initially Daybell, I believe, has psychosis, and that's his writings and everything else, all the ramblings that he made quite clearly shows the type of psychosis and the mystical psychosis that he has. So the first threat to him and Laurie, and to him himself, was Tammy Daybell, his wife. So it's almost like he had defensive functioning as well. He was the first person and felt threatened really for no reason other than the mystical delusions. But obviously there was more to it because he'd met Laurie, so it was an obstruction of delusion fulfillment. Tammy was in the way of both of them, and also she would have destabilised the relationship that these two had together. Now, these pictures, I mean, these people are the same, obviously. They're involved in it as well, but it goes further to me. JJ and Tylee, both of those children were, most likely, in my opinion, the children were an obstruction to these two's delusionment, and they felt that they were a threat. I believe that they started to question what was going on, and they became a threat, so the children had to be killed as well. Now, Charles Vallow, again, he was a threat to a whole lot of it. So it wasn't a no reason perceived threat, so it wasn't a defensive functioning killing Charles, but it definitely was an obstruction of delusion, and also a destabilisation of their relationship, because Charles Vallow was not having a bar of what was going on. He went to court about Laurie Vallow acting crazy. So, again, he's the enemy, and he's killed. Alex Cox. Now, it seems that he followed along for a while, and 3 people or more can, in fact, join in with this shared psychosis. And I believe Alex Cox was a part of this shared psychosis, along with perhaps a couple of other people. And then there became a point where he also became a threat to their delusion and their mystical psychosis that they were going through, so he had to be killed. So when you think of it like that, in terms of this mental disorder and shared psychosis that spreads outwards, and that each of the players that are deceased represented an enemy to both or either one of these two people, we can see why, in their mind, they had to be eliminated. And I personally believe this makes the most sense. Now, as I said, it can't be used in the USA, so they can't say that they have shared psychosis, I don't believe, unless there's other factors that come into it. But I 100% believe that all of the people that were murdered were in the way of these two people and in the way of their relationship. So their relationship was based on, according to them, love, but also their mystical and shared psychosis. So nobody was going to get in the way of that. So I find it really interesting when I think about it in terms of that. And I've seen nothing of it in any of the news or anything to do with it like that. So I don't believe that they're going to use it as an excuse and get away with it or anything like that. That's just my personal opinion. And I find it really interesting that I can see it reasonably clearly in both of their charts with Mercury and Neptune, this shared delusion. But what I can see, like I explained before, is that Chad Daybell is stronger in mind, therefore stronger in psychosis. And I think that as well because of this Mercury Neptune square that is so very, very tight here. But Laurie's is out of sign, out of kilter, and yeah, to me, she just definitely screams of, of being the secondary partner who initially, earlier on in life, wasn't crazy, didn't have psychosis, developed some type of mental break, then met Daybell, and then both had this shared psychosis, and everybody was their enemy. And if you listen to Melanie Gibb when she's talking to them in on the telephone, you can hear that they start talking about who's the enemy. They say that she's the enemy, that her boyfriend's the enemy. I actually think that Melanie Gibb is lucky that she's alive, because she became the number one enemy. So luckily they were being arrested and everything as she was coming out and telling the truth and talking on the phone to them, because I think she would have been in trouble. She was absolutely a perceived enemy to them both. So it seemed that there was a lot more people that were, in their eyes, destabilizing their relationship and obstructing their mystical delusions and their psychosis. So there we go. That's just a look at two planets, Mercury, Neptune, shared psychosis. In both of them, they're both connected. One is a trine, one is a square. That shows me that Chad is the primary psychotic and that Laurie was a secondary but developed psychosis. Now believe me, she's crazy as batshit. They both are. But I don't think together, if they weren't together, I doubt anybody else would have died. Maybe Tammy Daybell might have died. But aside from that, I don't believe anybody else or anybody would have died if they'd have never met each other. Okay, so that's just my analysis, my understanding of Folie, shared psychosis, how it relates in the chart. This is just a very small section of what you can do, the psychology behind criminals and criminal behaviour. And super interesting. So if you're interested in it, drop me an email and we can have a chat. Okay guys, you take care until we meet again. Bye bye.